Welcome to the Buzz Reality Show, the number one Liberty podcast in Detroit. I am Shaun Collins, the guy with a lot to say, and I'm here with a very special guest, Mrs. Sonia Agora. I'm glad to have you here. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. This is super fun. Long time coming.
It is a long time coming. I've actually been completely fascinated with your farm and all your farm videos that you post on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I think it's super cool just because it's something I aspire to do. I want to farm. I want the chickens. I want the goats. I want the pigs, the cows, you name it. I want it all. But unfortunately, I live in Detroit. You're not allowed to have those things here.
Yeah, you can't be self-sufficient at all.
No, not so
And
much.
no, or they don't want you to be at least. So,
But I'm glad you're here. And you're also doing something very cool, which, wow, you're running for Congress.
yeah, I am here in Oregon. I'm running for Congressional District 5 in Oregon.
So I got to ask you, just because I'm sure like a lot of the purists in the world, the purist agorists and the
Oh,
purist
yeah.
anarchists are like, what are you doing running for office, man? Like, are you crazy? This like, are you're fake? You're not real, whatever. You're not a real agorist. Please take us to that because like, I happen to think it's awesome, but the purists are not going to think it's awesome.
I mean, I'm not a purist in any regard. I think that's like something that should be rejected in general because people fluctuate and you should be able to adapt and move around as you need to. But honestly, the agorist community has been really nice to me. I was expecting a lot of pushback and people being like, "What are you doing?" Like, boop-a-doo. But it took me a moment to reconcile. So when I was first approached about it, like the last thing I wanted to do was run for politics. I love politics. I was at the national convention. That really kind of restarted me back into engaging with my state party, Libertarian Party of Oregon. I was already the public policy board secretary, but I like working in the background. I like doing strategy and like just pulling strings and negotiating, and I love that stuff. But when I was approached about it, I am in the right position. I really dislike the incumbent and everything that she's done. I am really well connected with conservatives and Republicans, the grassroots here in Oregon. I've worked with them on medical freedom and another campaign in the past. So it's kind of like, okay, I think that's actually might be the right move to make. And the way that I reconciled it with agorism is that no one knows what agorism is. Like, like I have my
Guy
Twitter.
included.
Yeah, like I have my Twitter. I have this amazing following, and like I'm able to spread the word, and it's been really amazing how receptive people are to it. But if you don't have a platform, or if you don't have a way to get to the people and speak to them and spread these ideas about liberty, then it's not going to go anywhere. So I was like, well, this is an opportunity. I'm running for Congress to leverage that in speaking about liberty and explaining things to people in a way that maybe they haven't thought about before and just kind of put it in their faces where they can't ignore it. So for me, it was a win-win, especially for agorism, especially for the cause of liberty.
And I totally dig that. And I'm one of those people who believe that, people like ANCAPs, anarchists, agorists, they should all be running for office. And I know that's out of the norm, and I'll probably catch a lot of shit for this, by the way. But like at the end of the day, how the hell are you going to get the message out if you're only talking amongst yourselves, right? You're only going to talk amongst yourselves at that point. So
And
you
I
have
hate echo chambers. I hate echo chambers. They're like hellholes. It's a terrible place to be.
Absolutely. So now, that being said, what was your big push? Or should I ask this question? Actually, I'm going to ask this question. Your big push to go for Congress, did that have anything to do with the state of Oregon uh, deploying their own National Guard to a foreign land in the middle of the giant, wildfires that was going on?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I made a post about that recently because I saw that they just sent several hundred, I think it was like four something, 460 to overseas. And it triggered my memory of being like, oh yeah, remember how in 2020 we had no Chinook helicopters here in our state and we burned badly. A lot of people lost their homes, lots of farms were destroyed. It was pretty horrific. Yeah, that definitely was an inspiration. I am a big fan of defend defend the guard and rescinding the War Act. And yeah, seeing that happen with the National Guard, I really don't get it. I don't get it. Also, like if you want to talk about national security, we're the West Coast. Like we are a very important line of defense. You need to have a really, really strong national defense over here. So I'm super over that. Our incumbent is just over and over and over voting for every single military industrial complex bill, continuing the NDAA, which also this time helped possibly reinstitute the draft because some of that tricky language in there that they put this time. She voted, one of her first things she did that I noticed was voted to continue bombing Yemen. Like as soon as she got into office. And it's like, this is gross. Okay, and the Democrats going to do the same thing. They both suck. So
Well, I mean, they're terrible, but you kind of hit the nail on the head when you talk about the West Coast thing, because just recently, China and Russia were not only did they have warships out near the Alaskan border, they also had war planes flying around
yeah,
pretty close to the border to where the United States actually sent the Air Force out there to chase them off, I believe.
yeah.
But like, if that's going to be happening around there, you definitely need your National Guard there. Like, I don't know what else to say about it other than like they're not protecting their own. When you have foreign invaders hovering around your coast, you should probably have your National Guard there.
Yeah, that's the whole point because legally, constitutionally, we're not going to deploy the army here domestically. There's a whole reason for that. So we have a National Guard, and that works out great. And it's also a states thing. So like Oregon has its own, and we can support natural disasters and things that happen here. California can do the same. If we need to make a coalition, we can. Like, why don't we? We need to keep that. I don't get it. So a lot of this is like me being confused and so digging and learning more and then trying to speak about it because it's like it's just very unconstitutional what they're doing.
Well, I mean, at this point, everything they do is unconstitutional. I mean, like the writing's on the wall at this point. They literally break the law on a
Yeah,
daily basis. By the minute, by the second, they're breaking the law all the
yeah,
time. And nobody even bats an eye. They actually most think it's a good thing what they're doing right now. Like a lot of
yeah.
people would think it's probably a good thing.
Propaganda.
They sent the National Guard over to where did they send your National Guard?
Syria, I know for sure. And then there was one other place that I would have to look up. I was just reading the article again today, but definitely Syria, which is sketchy.
Well, yeah, like the whole Middle East thing is sketchy. And I'm in my mid 40s. I don't know how old you are, but I'm in my mid 40s. And we've been doing this thing in the Middle East now my entire life. My entire life. It's not just post 9/11. We have been at least involved in proxy wars
Hmm.
my entire existence. I'll be 45 years old in 6 months, and my entire existence, the United States has been in the Middle East meddling, whether it's through proxy or actually dropping bombs.
Yeah.
And at what point does it end? What point does it, do you say enough already, as Scott Horton would say, or, stop lying to us about what you're doing? Because everything, people within my age group, you know, don't trust the government. And we have so many reasons not to. There's too many receipts.
Hmm.
9/11 alone, they lied to us about the whole thing. They lied to us about 9/11. They lied to us about going to Iraq. They lied to us about going to Afghanistan. So, and we all know we have the receipts now. The receipts are everywhere. The
Right.
internet is glorious because we have all this access to information, which they did. They did
Right.
this to themselves. You know what I mean? They gave us all this information, and now we go to talk against them, and we're the bad guys. You know,
Right. I mean, can you imagine like if we had this freedom of information back during like the Vietnam War? Because even just the little bit of television footage that came out through that is really what kicked off the anti-war movements with the Vietnam War because people had no idea. They had no idea about the Gulf of Tonkin even back then, but it was enough for them to protest. We didn't know about that till later.
so you're getting into Congress. or you're trying to get into Congress anyways, and you're trying to get into the group who literally gave up all of their power after 9/11 to the president. The Congress gave up all their powers and gave it to the president after 9/11. This is why they don't have to declare war anymore. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people freak out and be like, well, Congress didn't declare war. They don't have to. They gave their
Right.
powers to the president.
And that's literally one of our only jobs, is Article 1, Section 8. All we're supposed to be doing in there is voting on national defense, wartime, and interstate commerce. Like that's, and all we do is just, and funding, for all of these things. But now it's like, I see people want me to weigh in on all sorts of issues. And it's like, I'll weigh in on that, but that would be completely out of my jurisdiction. It's like, I shouldn't be making decisions about gun laws here in Oregon. That should be a states' rights thing. You should be talking to your state congressmen, and representatives and senators. Like that shouldn't be something in my purview. But then I see all these bills and things they're pushing through in Congress, and it's like, none of this is legal. All of this is unconstitutional. This is not something that you should be deciding for these states.
So then, what is your number one issue going into this campaign running for Congress? What's most important to you to get taken care of?
I mean, just basically pulling a Thomas Massey and just blocking every single war bill that they push forward. If they, every annually when we renew the NDAA, which is the Patriot Act on steroids, I'm just going to block that. And I feel like there's a tipping point where enough renegade congressmen, like maybe I'd be a one term, maybe the machine would be like, oh, we have to get rid of her immediately. They somehow haven't gotten rid of Massey yet. I'm not sure how. But maybe there would be a tipping point where you see enough people doing this that more and more people would be able to get into office and stay there, and we could create our own coalition within Congress to back each other up on voting against this stuff. That would be my main intention, is basically just being a massive obstacle in the path of a completely out of control federal government.
And I love you've brought up the word coalition many times just in the few minutes we've already started this show, which is a huge agorism point. I am not like totally like wired into agorism yet. I don't know enough about it, but from what I've heard, I'm for it. Like I'm totally down for it. I have all the people like, Zach from the Legacy Right telling me about agorism.
Mhm.
And Rin Brinley, he's talking to me about it. But agorism is literally about building coalitions.
Yeah, you have to. You have to. And it's funny because I thought I came up with agorism all on my own. I got burned out on politics and working on some campaigns, and I just stepped back from everything. And I was like, I'm just gonna focus on farming and just I don't care about any of this stuff. And then I started thinking about it like there's this whole idea that gets put in people's heads about, oh, you just need to go get a cabin in the woods with your family and grow on your own food and you're going to be fine, or you just want to be left alone. And honestly, I think that that's straight up propaganda. It's propaganda to prevent people from working with each other in a community aspect in order to make anything happen, because you literally can't do that. You will die. People back in the day when they were self-sufficient, resilient, they weren't raising all of their own food, all their own vegetables, providing all their own water, like making all of their own clothes. They weren't doing that. They had communities, they had neighborhoods, they had farming coalitions. So someone specializes in milk and someone specializes in pork. And then this guy over here is a leather worker and that's what they do. And then you barter and you exchange. So having this network that's built that has people that are integral to the system all working together, that's the most terrifying thing to the state. They don't want you to do that. They want you to be a fierce individual all by yourself where you can't actually affect anything whatsoever. Like you might be outspoken and like that's great. And like there's such a pushback against even the word community because of socialism and communism being such a bad thing. But community doesn't actually need to mean that whatsoever. It's just about resilience.
And I absolutely love that. And the one thing that is amazing to me for you running for Congress is that you are a homesteader and a farmer first.
Right.
before you do this stuff. Like, and before you decided, hey, I'm going to do this crazy thing, because running for office is insane.
It's pretty insane. Yeah.
It is
It's really
insane.
crazy.
Like, who the hell wants that
Like
kind of,
crazy people.
like, you have to be a little bit, in your head to want to do this, because it's not a glorious thing. Like, people are going to attack you. They're going to call you out. They're going to research you. They're going to find out every single thing you've
Mm.
done in the past, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
which is one of the reasons that, like, I haven't run for office. I have a shit past, but I've been open about it, you know.
I
But
mean, that's a cool thing about being a libertarian too, though. It's like I feel like I would be taking a lot more damage if I was a Republican or a Democrat because they hold them to these weird standards. And I'm a libertarian. I am like a wacky, weird person. I've done a bunch of crazy stuff in my life. Like you can't, I fit in perfectly with all the misfits. We need more misfits. They can't judge me on that.
Well, I mean, the misfits are the ones who are going to change the world. It's always been the minority who brought change. It's never been the majority who brought the change. It's
Right.
always been the actual minority. And you can take this all the way back to like 1776, when, America became America. Like, the vast majority were actually on board with the redcoats, but the minority were like, no, 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 no. You're not going to play games
Yeah.
with us anymore. We're going to do what we need to do. And I don't want to say too much on a podcast because I don't need the feds at my house, but, like, you know the time's coming where the minority is going to make some noise and do what they need to do. and
Yeah.
I, and I absolutely love that, and the fact that you are running for Congress, you know as a real person who homesteads. They raise their own food, they grow their own crops. Like, we need more people like that in office, because it's real. Everything that you're doing
Yeah.
is very real, not this, fairy tale bullshit that we see, every day. Well, this person, came up with this bill because, they want to, do away with raw milk per se. Like, we're going to do away with raw milk, which they have. They've
Mhm.
done away with raw milk, which, you guys, I would very much encourage you to try some raw milk. It's actually very good.
Raw milk is the
Oh
best.
my God, there's nothing
The
better.
best. You don't even know. People don't even know.
You
You
should
got
have
it.
seen the look on my mother's face when I told her I got some milk straight from the tit. Oh my God. She's like, Shaun. And I was like, what? And she's like, don't talk to me like that. I'm like, no, it came from the cow, you know? but,
Yeah.
but like, we need real people in office. We need everyday people in office. We don't need the people who have been, taken over by lobbyists in the military industrial complex and the corporations and the oil, who get, handouts for passing laws on their behalf. Like, we need real people who are doing real shit in real life in office. And so I love what you're doing so much.
I mean, it's honestly like the more I learn about it, like I have some people, some insiders that are, educating me on exactly how things work in Congress. And it's ugly. It's really gross. The system, the game that has to be played, they don't let people like me in, without a big fight in because they don't want to be exposed for just exactly how corrupt it is. Like it's a big old club and we the people are not in it, and the people in there that you think that are on your side, they're still making deals all the time. Nothing gets voted on without someone making a deal like, okay, like, I'll vote for your thing if you vote against this, even if it goes against their principles and values. Like that would be a main thing for me to expose. Even if it was a one-term thing, to just blow the door off constantly, being like, this guy's making deals with this guy's. Like, I am not in your club. Like everyone should know exactly what these people are doing.
Yes. And oh my God, like, I remember I had Michael White on recently. Well, not recently, it's been quite a few months now. I told him I wasn't going to have him on until he won his election in Arkansas, because he's running for state rep
Oh, nice.
in Arkansas as a libertarian in a two-way
Oh,
race
cool.
against a Democrat. So he, like, has a legitimate chance to actually do the
Wow.
thing as a libertarian. It's
Wow.
quite cool.
That's awesome.
But most libertarians, when they run for office, they say, oh, we're just doing it to get the message out. We know we're not going to win,
Right.
blah, 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 blah. Are you in this thing to win this thing? Like, are you going to do the damn thing and do as much as you can to try to take this?
I mean, so the thing about this race is it's a nationally recognized battleground race between the incumbent, the Republican, and a Democrat. So it's seen as a toss-up. It's extremely tight margins. It's already looking like the incumbent is going to lose anyways to the Democrat. So originally, my campaign idea was to it's a pressure campaign. It's to basically push war hawks out. If the state Republican Party or the Democrat Party continually pushes these garbage candidates that aren't representing the majority of Republicans and conservatives here in Oregon, they don't want war. They're worried about their pocketbook. They're worried about the grocery bills and gas, our timber industry falling apart here, wildfires. Like that's what they care about. They don't want our money sent to war anymore. And so the whole point is to expose that, put pressure on the Republican Party so they stop running these candidates and actually let some of these grassroots, more libertarian leaning or libertarian candidates come up in the game. But now I'm getting a lot of exposure and support for this. And I once I saw recently a poll or something showing that the Republican was actually probably going to lose. I put out a post saying, "Hey, Republicans, like maybe, the incumbent, Lori, maybe she should just drop out of the race and support me. And everyone should just get behind me as your candidate because you're going to lose to the Democrat. And I'm just going to scoop up that percentage in between."
I
Like,
like
why
that.
would you do that? What are you so worried about like a Democrat getting in office? You're literally going to let them get into office. You might as well support me.
Which is a great point. It's like, most people are like, I have a good buddy of mine. He's hardcore GOP. He's very connected in the GOP, actually. And I get a lot of awesome information from him. I love him. He's a great dude. I went to high school with the guy, for crying out loud. Who would have thought a couple knuckleheads like us were going to turn into these like political people who are involved in stuff like that? It's very bizarre.
Isn't that funny?
But like even him is like, we got to vote Republican this time because the Democrats are XYZ. We don't need to get into all that. If anybody's listening to the show right now, they know what the Democrats are, you know.
Yeah.
But I had to be like, hey man, uh the Republicans aren't so hunky dory either. Like if they say they're against the war in Ukraine, and they probably are, but they're like, hey, instead we're just going to go to China, or we're going to go to war with China, or
Yeah.
what's the other one? There's another one out there that
Russia, like North Korea, Iran.
like
You
all
know,
this shit. Yeah, they want Iran, they want China,
it
you
seems like
know.
when you get into office, you have to pick one of the couple baddies. Like you're going to be anti-Iran or China or Russia or North Korea. Pick one and like vote that way. And it's very transparent exactly how that works. And actually, the ORP here, they're probably not going to get behind me because they actually are trying to block all of the libertarian candidates off of the ballot by writing letters from their lawyer to the Secretary of State saying to throw out all of our candidates, mainly what we think is because of my race of possibly making the Republican lose and the fourth district race. So they tried to get us all off the ballot, and the Secretary of State, I don't know if there's been a formal response, but they let us all file. So we're officially in the system now. But they normally don't like to get involved with bylaws issues, which is what the Republicans are trying to say is that we have a bylaws issue. It's Libertarian Party, right? We always have bylaws issues. Uh,
I'm a Michigan, don't I know?
but it's from like 12 years ago. But now they're freaking out and there's like a threat of suing us and all this stuff. And it's like, wow, you guys are really scared. Maybe you should try doing things differently.
Oh, so they're trying to Larry Sharp your ass then.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly the same. Actually, our chair is supposed to go on his show soon. Talk about it with him.
Holy shit, I need to watch that, because like
Yeah.
that was literally one of the most rotten things in politics that has ever happened. That
Well,
I've
they're trying to do it again. So isn't that
Wow.
funny? Yeah. And I was like, man, like this, you guys are really stroking my ego right now. That you're doing this right now, like that makes me feel even more encouraged to run with how much you're freaking out. Like, what a bad move.
Because they refuse to give up power. That
Right.
and what most people don't understand is and Lars Mapstead, who ran for president as a
Mhm.
libertarian this last cycle, brought this to many people's attention. I love Lars. He was actually my endorsement for the libertarian nod. I had my top three, and he was the top dog. It was him, Rechtenwald, and Mike Termott, and we don't need to get into all that, but you know,
I was there.
I still love two of them. Let's just put it that way. I
Yeah.
still love two
Yeah.
of them. But Lars kind of brought, to attention that in 2020, 1,500 people actually ran for president in 2020. And
Wow.
how many people did you see on your ballot? Depending on your state, like here in Michigan, we have all the major parties on their ballot. So there was probably 6 or 7 that you could have chose from, which in Michigan, holy shit, that you have all the major parties on your ballot. That's pretty weird considering we're a communist state. But he pointed out the fact that there's a reason why this happens. And it's because that believe it or not, the RNC, and the DNC or the GOP, whatever you want to call them, because the Republicans are either RNC or GOP, get it.
Yeah.
But they're massive corporations.
Mm-hmm.
The actual political parties themselves are massive corporations who
Yeah.
have a monopoly on the voting system.
Yeah.
Which is why Larry Sharpe got booted out, in New York in 2022. The GOP sued him to get him off the ballot after he got all his signatures and raised all the money that tenfold. Like they were like, you need to get XYZ signatures and money. He beat it, all of it by far.
Yeah.
By far. And then the GOP came in and said, well, you didn't do this, this, and this. Some things weren't valid. Take him to court. Boom, he's not on the ballot. Sounds like they're going to do the same thing to you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. They really are trying. I don't know what the next step is. Our chair knows a lot more about the situation, but yeah. And there was like a rumor that someone found out from someone who with a, pretty reliable source that they were going to flood our nominating convention back in July with Republicans who registered Libertarian for the day to try and NOTA me. And it's like, I'm a NOTA 300 girl. So I was like, wait, you guys are going to NOTA me? Like, wait a minute.
You're going to use my own shit on me? What?
Yeah. How dare you? And yeah, if I had been able to go there, I was in Austin at the time. I was going to wear my NOTA 300 shirt that I designed. That would have been hilarious. But they didn't end up doing that because it got exposed. We were able to get a news article out and all this stuff. And the Republican Party was denying that they did anything. And then the next day, their letter got exposed that they wrote to the Secretary of State. We're like, you guys, look what you're doing. But this is not a new thing either. Like they do it to their own grassroots Republicans here. Like when I worked on a grassroots Republican governor campaign, it was so nasty. So that's one of the reasons that burned me out. It was so nasty, the games that the state like caucus leaders, like the game that they played, they were colluding with the Democrat media stations to keep on changing the parameters in order to get on television, which is how you get elected. People, majority of people still or at least like the boomers or that generation are still looking at legacy media and they see someone on the TV and they're like, I'm a vote for that person. And that's just the way it is right now. And so they're going out of their way to collude with the Democrat media to block out these grassroots candidates. And they kept on changing the metrics like, oh, you need to have this many donations or you need to have this much money and you need to have this many separate donations. And they'd be like, okay, we met it. We get to go on TV. And they're like, oh, no, it's this now. You don't have time.
Constantly moving the goalpost. Constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I couldn't believe it.
Parties.
Oh, yeah. And then it's even worse.
Wow. Wow. So
yeah.
you guys
they do that to their own people already. And it's like you try and expose it to people. You realize how corrupt they are. And they're like, yeah, but we got to vote. We got to vote Republican. It's like the people you elect aren't even Republicans, like to your standards. They're not even conservatives to your standards. Like they're not voting anything right. And they're like, yeah, they have a +2 to their office. It's like, come on, guys. Like nothing will ever change if you keep on playing this game.
Wow, that's actually very disheartening to hear, but I'm also not surprised. No, because I'm not surprised because I know how the system works. They don't want people like us having power. They don't want people who are liberty minded giving the power back to the people. They don't want that at all.
Right.
They want to own you. Like I say all the time, like, we're being run by satanic globalist pedophiles. This is what the world is like. You look at the WEF or the WEF or whatever you want to call it. You look at, the people running for office, and it's always like, well, this person was at Epstein Island. Well, this person was at Epstein Island. They were all at Epstein Island.
Why are you guys there?
Like, why are you hanging out with them? And the left will be like, well, Trump has all these pictures with, Jeffrey Epstein, which, yeah, that's super sketchy for sure. For sure. He's got all
it's
these.
a big old family. Like they're all looking the other way. Like they're all rubbing shoulders with each other. It's all money. Like you can't, it's corrupts, and like power does corrupt. So I don't know. I think there's just something toxic in the air over there.
Well,
You just
power
have to have a really strong foundation.
but the foundation is not strong. There's no foundation anymore. This is, we're going to bring in the worst of the worst swamp creatures into government. We had Klaus Schwab who talks about, penetrating the cabinets. That was his big thing. And they've done it. They have done it, the globalists, and they've done it not only here in the United States, they've done it all over the world.
Yeah.
These globalists have penetrated cabinets. They're now running, for office. Think about all the people who have, been a part of the WEF that are in our own government right now. They're sitting in chairs. They all go to Davos. They all go hang out with these people. And they have the worst of the worst ideas for us normal folks every day. Like they want us chip tracked and eating bugs, literally.
Oh yeah. 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 They can't have a self-sufficient, resilient population. It's just like, such a great analogy, that little cartoon Pixar movie, A Bug's Life, with the little ants and the grasshoppers. People use it sometimes. I always enjoy it because like the grasshoppers are like, if they knew how powerful they were, like they would destroy us. We have to keep them like working and like, terrified all the time, because if they turn against us, and then they're terrified. So all these people in these seats of power, I think, are truly terrified all the time. That's why they want to take all of our guns away. But meanwhile, they have their own private security, surrounded by guns at all times. They've got gates, they've got, all that stuff, but they want the people disarmed. And that's honestly, like of all the rights, the Second Amendment is the one that guarantees that you will keep all the rest of your rights.
Without the Second Amendment, you don't have any rights.
You don't have anything.
Period. Yeah. Period. If you don't have that equalizer to protect yourself, your family, community, you have nothing.
Yeah.
You're just another slave, and the fact of the matter is like, as Americans, we are slaves now. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, Americans get furious when I say that, but I'm like, dude, how can you,
do they like what? They don't like you using the term slave, or they don't want to admit that it's true.
I think it's a little of both, but then they go all the way back to, chattel slavery. Well, it's not the same as chattel slavery. Try not paying your taxes and see what happens. You'll see chattel slavery real quick.
Your tax dollars pay for that guy knocking down your door right now and shooting your dog.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
And Americans are clueless. They are literally clueless. Like people like me, people like you, we go and we work our asses off every single day of our lives just to pay half of our money to the government. Half. We're not, and people, some shit leftards will be like, well, it's only 30% that they take. Well, what about FICA? What about property taxes? What about, taking a shit tax? Like you got to buy toilet paper. You have to pay taxes on your toilet paper. Yeah. Most people have to pay for water. I live in the city. I got to pay for water.
There's a reason why meter maids are universally hated. It's like one of the most egregious taxes there is. It's completely unconstitutional. Everyone hates meter maids.
Hell yeah. But here we are, like, we're giving half of our money, and then some people will be like, well, it's, the taxes are the price we pay to live in a civilized society. Please tell me what's civil here. This is a dumpster fire, what we're living in right now.
Yeah, it's
and where's the representation? Like taxation without representation is supposed to be a thing, quote unquote. Where's our representation?
Right.
Please.
When people argue with me about, taxation is theft and everything, saying that that's like incorrect, I'm like, okay, how about taxation with representation. Like we're not being represented at all. So that, do you want to go back to that? Because that's pretty clear cut. Is that if, and I understand like on a city level, right? Is people agreeing, okay, we're going to live in this city. Okay, here's some things that we're going to vote on, and we're okay with getting taxed for because we want to have these things happen in our city. But then it grows bigger and it grows bigger. And then you have the state making decisions about what some little farmer on the other side of the state is doing. And none of it applies to him because he's actually thinking about what applies to the city and then applying it to some rural farmers that has nothing to do with. And then it gets bigger, and you have the federal government making decisions about things that they should never be making decisions about in the first place. And it's just a really, really big monster.
And I'll tell you what, I have one of the greatest stories ever from a client of mine. I paint houses for a living. And they lived on a kind of like a private road, but it wasn't a private road. It's a road with like 6 houses on it, right? And it was all gravel, it was all dirt, and they wanted to have it paved. And they went to the city and said, "Hey, we want to have it paved. What, how much is it going to cost? What do you want to do?" Mind you, it's 6 houses, it's not a big area. They're like, "Well, we don't know if we can necessarily do it, but it's probably going to be somewhere around $500,000 to pave this, right?" And so the 6 people on the street were like, no, fuck that. That's crazy. And so they called a private contractor. It was like, "Yo, what are you going to charge us? Come check this out. What are you going to charge us to pave our street?" Get ready for this. $78,000
Right.
to pave their little road.
Right. Because the state gets funds released from the federal government and from the state, everyone's tax dollars, by the way, that were stolen, and they get misappropriated all over the place. And then they're like, "Oh, we have all this money. We have to spend it because if we don't spend it, the government won't give us this money again. So we need to spend it." So then that's how you get like, several tens of millions dollar bridges built that never get built, like a bridge to nowhere. Or it takes like over a decade to build this thing because they're just trying to draw it out. They're trying to suck every single last penny they can out of this project. It's disgusting.
And
Man, that sucks. That's ridiculous.
they do it every day. And those people they had their road paved. They did it. It wasn't as wide as they wanted it, but they'll take it. There's 6 people on the road. So if somebody's coming off the road, somebody pulls off, and they let the other guy through, and it's great.
Yeah.
But $500,000 to 78 grand, and they did it all voluntarily. Like, and actually, one of the neighbors didn't have the funds to do it, all the way. They had a certain amount of money they could afford, and the other neighbors were like, "Hey, we got you," and they all kind of chipped in.
Yeah.
That's agorism.
Yes, it's the free market in action too. It's like that's why the government wants to restrict and create all these regulations and barriers and licenses and fees and permits because they know they can't compete with free enterprise ever. Because they're going to say something's $500 million or however much it was, or $500,000. And the other guy who is just, mom and pop shop, family business, local neighborhood place, they want $7,800 or $78,000. They can't compete with that. So they want to try and stop you from engaging in the free market as much as possible.
Which is like the free market is actually an amazing, amazing thing because the market will always work itself out. Mm-hmm. The problem is the government that gets involved with that market.
Yeah.
And they bring in their friends and the bureaucracy. It was $500,000 because they had to come up with I'm just kind of not, this isn't like something I heard, but I know how it goes. It was $500,000 because they had to come up with a team that put together this road. And then they had to come up with another team that oversaw that team, and then on top of it, they had to hire the contractor who's probably going to subcontract that out. And then the next thing you know, like the $500,000, it probably really cost $78,000 to do that road. or
Yeah.
that little,
Probably would have been a really crappy road too.
oh my God, you want to talk about crap roads? Come to Michigan, and they're all under construction right now at
Yeah, forever.
the exact same time. You're not going anywhere fast ever in Michigan ever again. It's not happening. Which, by the way, Mrs. Gretchen Whitmer, said, we had all this, all this bank, we had all this cash bank that we were going to do all this stuff for the roads. When the dust settles, the state of Michigan is going to be billions in debt. Billions.
Yeah.
And she's out of here in 2026. She's gone. She don't care.
Oh, she's done. Her 10 years or her term is over.
Well, it'll be this is her second term,
Oof.
which is crazy because, like, governors have a couple of terms, presidents have a couple of terms, but Congress, you can be there for 900 years and it's fine. You could be, Mitch McConnell having seizures on stage, or freezing up or
Yeah.
whatever, and everything.
Oh man.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I do believe in term limits for everything. I actually believe in age limits. Like, you should be able bodied and have a sound mind to be in office.
Right.
You can't be 97 years old or 85 years old, in Congress running for president and all that stuff. Like, if somebody in Congress can't get their job done in 12 years, they shouldn't have that job.
Yeah. Right. And it also gives way to like mentorships, like handing things down to the next generation, like actually cultivating relationships with people in the community so they can carry on whatever it is you're trying to do. If you stay in that long, which they do, they're all career politicians, and yeah.
I'm in my mid 40s and there's politicians in Congress that have been there longer than I've been alive. What? Like, we live in America and this is happening. But I mean, it's happening everywhere. I mean, there's career politicians all over the world.
Yeah.
And there has to be some type of, breaking point where, like, hey, your time's up. It's over. Like, pass on the torch, give it to the young people. We don't need a bunch of boomers running the show. We don't need a bunch of Gen Zs running the show. Please, God, no. But, like, one thing I did like about Lars Mapstead when he was running for president is he was a Gen Xer. And we don't see enough Gen Xers, and I'm a Gen X guy. So, like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gen Xers have they're the silent ones right now. I feel like they're starting to poke their heads out, but I feel a lot of Gen Xers are like waiting for their moment. Like I don't see them out front that often.
because a lot of us just want to be left alone.
Yeah. Yeah. A left alone generation, the latchkey kids.
We were the last ones who, got our ass beat when we did something bad. We were the last ones who were, left to our own devices. Like, I was literally getting myself off to school and getting my own cereal and shit in, like, kindergarten, first grade.
Yeah, that's how my husband is a Gen X. I'm a millennial, which is great. Go millennials! Like, ooh.
But are you an older
I'm on
millennial
the
or a
edge.
younger millennial?
I'm an older millennial. I'm
Okay.
35, so I'm right on the edge. My husband's
You're
only
like
five
my
years
wife
older than
then.
me.
Yeah.
We're right on the edge, right? But he has the same experience. Total latchkey kid. His parents are off, like doing their thing, and not a lot of connection with what was going on in the world at the time and all of that. I feel like growing up, like I had 9/11 happen when I was. I guess you guys are older though. But I think I was sixth grade. Like I feel like I was highly affected by every single thing that's happened.
Thank you for making me feel old.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about that.
Kidding. I'm totally kidding.
You're in high school or you're out of high school?
I was 21 when 9/11 happened. I
Oh,
was
and then how
out
old
of
was
high
I? I
school.
wasn't in sixth grade. Maybe I was in, I don't know.
Either way, I feel old. Like, my wife, it's so funny because every once in a while, because when it comes to pop culture stuff, 7 years difference. My wife and I, Mrs. Buds and I, are 7 years apart. So, like, we'll talk about some pop culture stuff and she doesn't understand. And I'm like, ugh. Or sometimes she'll be like, I'll be like, well, in 9/11, for instance, I was 21 in 9/11. And she'll be like, I was 14.
Yeah.
Don't say that. Don't do that to me. That's vile and it's gross. Don't make me sound like a bad guy.
Wow.
But we met when we were older, so it doesn't
And
matter.
it changes as you get older. It becomes an okay thing.
But yeah, she'll do that to me every once in a while. She'll be like, "Well, yeah, I was maybe 14 or 15." I'm like, "Ugh." But you are doing something very cool. You're doing something very out of the norm. Um, you're actually probably making some people mad by doing what you're doing, because when the purists make me so angry
Yeah.
because it's like vote gold no matter what. Or anarchists will be like, don't vote for anybody. And I understand, don't vote for anybody. I'm not voting for anybody for president this year, that's for
Right.
damn sure. But I'm like, we have to get our ideas out there. And part of getting our ideas out there is playing in the sandbox with the others. We have to do it. And even if a libertarian gets elected, they still have to play in the sandbox with the Republicans and Democrats. They have to. There's no choice. You're not
Right.
just going to get elected as a libertarian, or we're just going to have this big giant libertarian utopia and everybody's
It's going to be Ancapistan all of a sudden.
yeah,
Like,
and Capistan,
it's
like all
like
this is happening. No, it's going to be a war at that point.
it's a slow burn. Yeah, it would be a little tiptoes in the right direction, and hopefully to cause momentum to build. To inspire other people to get involved and think about things a little bit differently and look at things and be like, wow, this is kind of messed up.
And things are messed up. And that's why we need people like agorists, people like, even libertarians, or, even anarchists, like, hey, run for office and get the ideas out there, or at least be the person, as Michael White would say, back in the day when he came on my show a long time ago, he's like, be the guy that makes everybody say, do we really need to come to work today? Like, do we want to do that? And do we want
Yeah,
to deal with that guy today? Be that person, be that guy, you know,
right.
be the one that's going to, or be the gal, be the guy, be the gal, be the one who's going to be like honest and unmerciful and bring the truth about everything and anything,
Yeah.
rather than just sit back and be the person who's bitching online about all the Republicans and Democrats who's fucking them over or whatever, but not doing a damn thing about it, because that's a vast majority of the Libertarian Party at this point. Well, we can't blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, then go do something about it.
Yeah,
If
you gotta get in it. Like I love throwing myself off the cliff of experience constantly because also it's like if I wanna know who the threat is, if I want to know who the enemy is, I want to understand their psychology. I want to know what's going on in there. Because I'm convinced that everyone feels validated in what they do. Even Klaus Schwab, even all these like Bill Gates and all these terrible people, I don't think they're classic Disney villains. I don't think they're just like, ha ha ha, we're evil and we want to destroy the world. Like I think that they have something even more disturbing in them where they're like, we're doing the right thing. We're going to save the world. All these people respect me and they love me and all, they have all the ego stuff going on. But at the same time, there's something in them that they think that they're doing the right thing. So you don't understand what motivates people unless you go in and figure out their game and and be surrounded by them. Go play in the sandbox. So it's like, put me in DC, surround me with these people so I can understand how to take them all out. And that's what more people need to do. You don't need to be afraid of that. The echo chamber is a terrible place. Like, oh, I fought for liberty today because I stood around and agreed with everyone around me. Like that's not actually what it takes. And like you mentioned earlier, the founding fathers, people were against them. They were not a fan. Like they were almost pariahs in their communities. People were like, holy cow, you're going to screw everything up. Please don't do this. And they're like, we're going to do it anyways. And then everyone had to go along with it at some tipping point and be like, okay, yeah, this is messed up.
and that's what we need at this point. We need a complete overhaul. I gotta be careful when I speak of revolution or whatever. Well, we need a revolution, you know, we need a
Well,
peaceful revolution.
that tipping point is very, very much on the horizon. So this is kind of like an exhaustive last step. People need to try everything that they can to stop it because we are on a roll in a direction and maybe it's inevitable. Maybe we can soften the blow. maybe we can recover a little bit faster. But there's no other time other than right now to get involved and at least just try while we still can.
We have to try, like, because, and I just got into a big thread on X today. We pre-record, everybody knows that. So, but whatever. I was on a big thread today on X where, we were talking about what's going on in the UK and stuff like that in Venezuela. And I was like, I personally believe in my heart, no matter who wins this election, whether it's Harris or Trump, because it's going to be one of them. It's not
Yeah.
going to be Chase Oliver or RFK. It's not happening. But there's going to be real violence in the streets, no matter who wins out of those two, because the other side is not going to take losing. It's not going to happen. So, like, whether it's Trump or whether it's Harris, whoever wins, oh my God, the other side will be burning cities. They're going to be doing whatever, and I'm not for rioting. There was one riot I ever applauded for, and that was in Paris, where they burned down the Black Rock building. I was very happy.
Yes, I remember that one.
I was like,
I was
okay, you guys,
thinking like, yeah, this is great.
kudos.
Oh, you guys are actually going after like something that matters. Like, why are you not out there burning down the IRS buildings? Like, I mean, I don't condone that either, but it's still interesting to see the way that people move towards different structures sometimes. Yeah, that's oh dang it, what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah. Well, so you mentioned earlier the globalist agenda, right?
Yes.
This is people need to be seeing the big picture here. America is the last bastion of this wild experiment of a representative republic. I hate to use the word democracy, but we are a wild experiment. It's been 250 odd years. And, with our Second Amendment and our rebel blood, we're kind of an obstacle in the path. If you wanted to have a globalist empire all around the world, America's kind of in the way. So what's one of the best ways to get America out of the way and stop being that troubled stepchild? It's by causing massive disruption. And you cause massive disruption by pitting people against each other. They're not looking up. They're not looking at the people pulling the strings. They're just fighting each other. And honestly, I think that the fastest way to the most disruption is Trump being elected, because the left has shown us that they are very easy to get stirred into action. They're very, very well organized. I dealt with Antifa a lot when I was doing medical freedom protests. They're so dumb. They're so dumb. Very well, very well coordinated. It's actually amazing.
Well, because they're backed by George Soros. They have a bunch of money.
It's incredible, really, how well their whole system works and what they're able to accomplish. And it's very disturbing. But I think that it's way easier to activate those guys and kick those guys into burning down cities. Conservatives and Republicans, I feel like the way to do that would have been assassinating Trump, which is what they try to do. That might have been the thing to kick over the can, to get conservatives and Republicans, because they're the party of law and order. They don't really want to go do that stuff. It's very hard to kick that hornet nest. That didn't work. So if Harris gets elected, I actually don't know how they're going to get the disruption they want. This is all hyperbole, of course.
Well, yeah, of course. And I understand. I'm picking up what you're putting down big time. Had they killed Trump, there would be violence in the streets still to this day.
Yeah.
I don't think there would be any stopping them at all, because of the fact that we have 400 million guns in the United States, and they can't really drop bombs here, to stop them. No. Unless they want to take out whole communities, which would start a whole other shitstorm.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to. I don't want violence in the streets at all. The last thing I want to do,
no, of course not,
violence. The last thing I want to do is be violent. I don't want to be a violent individual, but I'll let it be known real quick. If you can fuck around in my neighborhood or come fuck with my family, I don't care.
Right.
I will be that guy who you fear on the TV. I will become that guy. So please, we're like, a lot of us are begging, like, please don't make us do this. Right. We don't want to. We want to live our lives, be left alone, have our families, and just live, do our jobs, whatever it may be, and just be everyday people. We don't want any of this. I don't want it. That's the
Right.
last thing I want.
And
But
most people don't. Most people don't want that.
they
We're
don't want that at
comfortable.
all.
Like we have a lot of things to complain about, right? But also this is America. It's the greatest country in the world still. I believe that like we are so comfortable. We have all of our needs met and that's why we have our, up to 50% taxation. We're like, oh, this is okay though, because like I have, my TV and I got my sports and I can go down the street to the bar and it's still relatively safe. And so it's hard for people to really see how much it's deteriorating and how many are like how our liberties are slowly being trickled away because they don't pull the rug out at once. That's how you kick over the bee's nest.
Right.
They pull it one thread at a time while you don't really notice and you're like, well, that's not bad enough to freak out about. I don't want to be that guy. I'm not going to freak out about that. But something like what was attempted on Trump, um, that would have certainly kicked over the can. And one thing I didn't see people talking about enough was, people have been saying that for a while, being like, they're going to assassinate, Biden or Trump or something's going to happen. And I was like, that would never happen because then you make a martyr. And they learned with Lenin and MLK and like all of these like huge thought leaders that when you take out one of these people, it creates a martyr and people get behind it. It emboldens the movement. So the last thing they want to do is take out Trump. But then I realized, well, they don't care about that. That's what they want. They want that movement to build. They want that disruption. They want people to freak out. And I'm so grateful that there was divine intervention or whatever that stopped that from happening.
Me too, because at this point and at this juncture in the United States government itself is literally begging for the populace to be violent. That's what they
Yes.
want. So
Yes.
they want that more than anything, and they will do what they need to do to make it happen. But also,
Yeah.
you look at people like the UK and in Venezuela. I'm sorry. The the populace is only going to be pushed so far before they start to push back.
Yeah.
Like, and that's where it's going to become chippy, you know, and that's what we don't need to see. But is it in the horizon? Yeah, I could totally see it. I know for a fact that there's going to be violence in the streets, no matter whether it's Trump or Harris who gets elected.
Right.
I
And even if it's not like a politically motivated thing, economically with where we're headed as far as another recession, a really bad recession, that's enough to really like cause massive disruption as well. Like we're $35 trillion in debt. We have massive inflation. We have a Federal Reserve out of control. The grocery bills are insane. It hurts me. The grocery bill for me is like, and I don't even get that many groceries because I have all the meat that I need. And so
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
you got to feed your animals and grow your crops.
well, yeah. And then people are right. And it's like, how do we make this food affordable to people so that everyone has access to it? Because our prices keep going up because the cost of grain and the cost of mills and the cost of shipping, like it's all just ratcheting up. And we don't get the privilege of these government subsidies, right? So everyone is completely unaware exactly how bad it is because that milk you buy in the store is completely subsidized. Once those go away, once that's not able to be supported anymore, you're in big trouble.
And that's what's going to happen. Like, when World War III does jump off, and it will, we're on our way as we speak. Like, this is what they want, and they have to have it because war brings in big business, and the money printer will go burr, and that's how they're going to try to get their way out of it. But it's not going to happen this time. There's the bubble is bursting. It's there. It's going to happen. So not only do you want to have a political discord, you're going to have people who are dead broke, shortages. They can't eat. There's no food. There
Mhm.
could be no electricity, whatever it may be. You're going to take that all away from people all at one time in the name of whatever the hell you guys are doing on your agenda.
Yeah. Our
Oh,
forests burning down because they sent our National Guard out of the state to Syria. Like, eh,
exactly. At a certain point, there's going to be some civil discourse. It's coming.
yeah.
And that, oh man.
And then that's why it's like we got to spread the message of hope, which I think that the concept of voting, even though there's a lot of instability in it right now, especially after the 2020 election, but the concept of voting does instill hope in people. Otherwise, they feel completely helpless and completely out of control. That's why it's so dangerous, why it's so bad that we have no trust in our electoral system right now. Because actively voting for someone, like when people vote for me, I hope that the feeling that they have is like, oh my gosh, maybe we can make a difference. Maybe this person can go in there and like do this crazy stuff. And when you lose that, when you lose the ability to think that you affect politics at all, and I know so many people who have no faith in the system whatsoever, and I'm borderline one of them. Uh, that's a very dangerous step. So I think that's kind of the conclusion I came to my mind about being, since I'm so hesitant about how much effect voting has. That's where I've come to in my mind is like it's really important. It's really important for people to feel like they're engaged in the political process and that they have a voice. And until we don't have that anymore, we should keep trying to do that. And in the meanwhile, keep one foot in the other world where you are preparing yourselves for the worst. Expect the best, prepare for the worst, you know, stockpile your stuff, build community, meet your neighbors, find local food sources. Like do all of those very rational things for your family. But at the same time, if you need to feel hopeful about the system, engage in the political process.
I love what you said just there, and I think it's amazing. And one more thing I would like to add to that is the one thing that this country needs right now at this very moment is the people in Appalachia, in the backwoods, or anybody who's super rural in the backwoods who don't come out much, but they are trained to join forces with the gangbangers in the hood in Detroit or Atlanta or LA or whatever it may be, and you bring those people together, it is a wrap. It is over. The state has no chance at that point. That's what they're terrified of. And that's what they need. That's what we need as a people. I'm getting goosebumps saying that right now. We need that as a people right now to join forces to build the coalitions that you are speaking of, to be a free populace and have a free market and get ourselves through this nonsense that the state has brought to us. We need that type of unity. Otherwise, we're in big, big, big trouble.
Yeah, unity is the whole thing. You know, the government is absolutely terrified about people working together and also sidestepping them, being like, yeah, that's a big agorist thing. It's like we don't really need these services. We're not going to do that. Or like people who homeschool being like, yeah, you can't have that sweet, you know, $7,000, $10,000, you know, number above my kid's head. We're going to go over here and do this. Or, we're not going to use your hospitals. We're going to, you know, we're going to do our own natural medicine or start our own little private membership association, medical clinic. Government hates that. Like they absolutely hate that. Don't do that, guys. That's a bad thing. The government doesn't like it.
I want to be able to come to your farm, Mrs. Sonia Agora, and be like, hey, I'm going to buy a whole cow from you. Take this silver from me.
Yeah.
That's the society I want. Or
Yeah.
take this Bitcoin from me, or take anything outside of the fiat currency from me, and we will trade and barter like that. You know,
Right. Yeah,
we're
create your own currency, which the government really doesn't like. And my family farm actually did create its own commodity-based currency. I don't think I can like necessarily add like legally tell people to go support my family farm right now because I'm running a campaign, but you know, but you can do that. You can create your own currency, commodity-based. It's very cool.
which is how you that's how you win too, is literally cut their legs off. Start,
Yes.
getting into precious metals and paying for things in precious metals. There's no taxes, or
Right.
Bitcoin or Monero. I'm not a big digital guy. I'm a more of a precious metals guy. I do have some Bitcoin in my life, and I would never put all my chips in that. Oh hell no, just because I know there's cyber attacks and stuff like that. And when those things happen, you don't have your Bitcoin.
Yeah, I don't trust it. I don't understand it and I don't trust it. But that reminds me that one of the biggest things that I would be motivated to do in Congress is to figure out, like, the whole point that we're in there is to figure out how to spend everyone's stolen money. So like already I'm like in trouble because it's like that's my job would be to figure out how to spend everyone's money. And so that would be the thing I'd be the most interested in really looking into is how do I avoid doing that? Like, how do I create systems or a bill that like allows people to receive their money back? You know, like we give tax credits to families. How do we get that back to people, back to the communities instead of earmarking it for a special interest, like some city wants to build a bridge that never gets built? You know, I want the money to go back in people's pockets. How do we do that?
This is
Uh,
exactly why we need people like you in office. I absolutely love it. So, to close this out, number one, how can we find you?
My website is sonia4oregon.com. You can sign up as a volunteer there. We just got set up for donations. We have a big fundraising push right now in order to get me in the voter pamphlet so everyone can see my face and see my statement. So if you go there and donate, everything is appreciated. And if you're in Oregon, you want to volunteer, we would love that. We would welcome you.
Excellent. I love that. And to close it out, what's your mission? What is your mission in this campaign?
My mission is to spread the message of liberty, but also to kind of hold the iron to the feet of the government and the people in power and let them know that there's just regular people like me that are interested in stepping up and taking a deeper look at what they're doing and putting a stop to it once for all.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Sonia Agora. I really appreciate your time. And I would love to talk to you again before all this election stuff happens, just to give you one more push in the world or whatever. But you're awesome. I love what you're doing. A lot of people love what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing. And until next time, y'all, peace, love, and liberty. Be good.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course.